Right, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the new build. As you can see from the picture, it is Revell's 148 scale Catalina. Now, beginning at the beginning, we are going to look at the cockpit for the start of the construction. And what you see in front of you is what came in the kit. Now, I touched upon this in the inbox review and the sort of introduction to the build, and I did say that the kit did come with a True Details cockpit, which that's that resin there you can see from that. Now the photo etch sheet is from Edard, and I'm not sure if it actually came with the resin cockpit or not, but anyway, you can see here that whoever bought the kit off had started making up some of the photo etch parts, and to be honest with you, there isn't the instructions for the photo etch in the kit, so I'm going to have to go on the Edard website to download and get an eye view on the instructions to see what we're doing. But from looking at what we've got here in the resin and from looking at the instructions, so part one is making up with the pilot and the co-pilot seat and joining them to the bulkhead, and it looks like the True Details kit resin seats actually are designed to work with the kit parts. So what we can do is I will go and we'll gather all these parts off the sprues, and we'll get ready to start seeing how they go together and hopefully start assembly. Okay, so we're back, and thankfully I was wrong. So I do actually have in the box of goodies, we've got the instructions for the Edard photo etch, which gives us a bit of extra detail for the front cockpit, which is good. So we'll be able to figure out what bits of PE that's been made. Now, as I said in the review, the kit plastic, I think you can hear it, is really nice and crisp. But, and this is where one of the buts is, Revell are not well known for the finesse on their molds. So you can see we've got flash, and then we've got some really substantial sprue attachment points, which we need to take care of. Let me just zoom out a little bit. There we go, a bit wider picture. Now also we've got the kit seats, so we can look at those, and then these are the resin seats we put next to it. And I think you can see that actually the resin seats are far nicely molded with molded in seat belts, which you should be able to paint up nicely. Failing that, we have got, if you want to take it all off, in this photo etch fret, you've got the standard RAF satin harnesses. So we'll see how we go. Anyway, just before I get on and detach all these huge attachment points, you need to be very, very careful in that you don't just hack away at them, because you could end up taking away quite a bit of the surface detail of the aircraft, leading you to do more repairs once you've got the fuselage joints together. What I like to do is get my trusty razor saw, photo etch razor saw, and just go in with the fine side of the blade, from the reverse side here. We'll just go in and slightly back from the fuselage itself. We'll just go in and cut through that attachment point. You can leave that bit there, because when we join it together and glue it together, then we'll remove that piece away, because it's flush with the seam or the jointing edge, then it won't obstruct the jointed edge once we get them all cut off. So I'm going to go and trim up all these parts, get them cleaned up from the little bit of flash that's on some of them, and then we'll come back and we'll get ready to look at assembly. Right, so we're back. And it's taken a bit of time to get some of these parts cleaned up. In true Revell fashion, some of the parts have been a bit flashy. And it's taken a little bit of time, but we got there in the end. So, just kind of laid it out in order on the instructions just to help give me a pointer where things are. So we've got part 71 here, and we've got part 61 here. We need to make up the two seat assemblies. So we'll not worry about this one because that's part B. We'll look at A, which is the right hand seat. And looking at the pilot's seat, looks like they've already been cleaned up from their molding blocks, which is fine. If I just put them side by side, just blur out the back with my hand, you should be able to focus. I think you can see the kit detail is not too bad, to be fair, but I think the resin is a lot better. So, being resin, we're going to need to glue it with super glue. And actually it's quite a nice fit as well. So if we look here, so where the kit part goes in, if I can zoom this in a little bit, there we go. So where the kit part goes in and locks into that nice beveled edge, we get the resin part, and that fits beautifully on the resin edge. So if we get the other side, offer that up, and that fits very, very nicely too. We end up with a well-fitting seat. So I think I've decided we're just going to use the resin seats because it's going to save me having to work foot wedge seat belts. Right, so super glue, what do I use? Well, I just use good old Loctite. And I use a little product from Display, which, there you go. And this is simply a super glue holding station. So you've got two machined pieces of metal that the glue, you put a dot of glue on the top, and then you've got a little applicator. Get that in frame, get it to zoom. There you go, there's the applicator, and you can see it looks like a sewing needle with the end cut off. And basically with capillary action, the glue wicks up into that little U shape, and then you can drop it where you want it. Now, got some glue here. This is kind of getting to the end of its days. Don't bother buying big tubes of super glue. Just buy little tubes because it goes off that quickly. These are £1, couple of £1. You'll probably get a couple of models out of these. But yeah, it does tend to go off. You can keep it in the dark, keep it in the fridge. There's loads of different ways of keeping it fresh, but I tend just to buy small tubes. You can buy a 3-pack for a £5 or something like that. And yeah, just use what I need, and when it gets finished, it's finished. You start another one. So you can see there, focus, see the glue wicked up in the applicator. So all we need to do is just run the glue down in the mounting. There, and then we'll get the seat frame part and just offer it up. It should just bed nicely into the glue. Now, actually, we need to do a little bit of tidying up. I should have test fitted this beforehand. Okay, we need to just take a little check out the bottom of that frame. So, no great deal. We can always reapply the glue. A scalpel, so we'll just check that fit again. You can just see there, we've got that little step, so we can either just take that away to make it fit, which will probably be the easiest option. So just a resin with a sharp knife, definitely not the way you're supposed to use a knife because I'm cutting towards myself, but that's my thumb and I'm experienced enough to do it. So we just want to gently, that's it. Where I can, I do like to cut resin rather as sand or file. That's purely down to minimizing the amount of dust created, because resin dust getting into your lungs is not good. So you really need to be wearing a mask. So you can see that just removing that little bit, that fit is just nearly perfect. Yeah, you really need to be wearing a mask if you're sanding any great quantities of resin. And at least if you cut it or scrape it, it's coming off in large enough pieces that won't get airborne and you won't inhale. There. And therefore you protect your lungs. If you're having to sand large quantities of resin, there we go, there's the fit, perfect, then you must wear a respirator. Otherwise you're going to expose yourself to inhaling resin particles, and resin particles have been linked to formation of cancers in the lung. And no hobby, no matter how much fun it is worth giving yourself a terminal injury for. Right, when the applicator bugs up with dry glue, see the end there? All you need to do, get a lighter, burn it off in the flame. So it's really good. Obviously make sure you're in a well ventilated room because you don't want to be breathing in the fumes. So back in here, so get the glue, run down that joint, and then we need to run it along the bottom edge of the seat. Try and keep it in frame for you. There we go. And the beauty with the applicator is it means you make a really neat job of it, and you don't put too much glue on. Okay. And we're back. Right, so we'll just check the fit of this before we go up for the glue up. So sits in nicely. Happy with that. Yep. Right. It's the first time I've used resin from True Detail, and I have to say I'm quite impressed with it. Good quality casting and good fit with the kit parts. So it's obviously been designed quite well. Kind of a shame that you can't get it anymore. And I do have True Detail sets for another aircraft, so that's giving me optimism. Right, there we go. So there is the first seat in, and what we've also got to put in here is the footplate and rudder pedals. I'm assuming that goes right to the back. The instructions aren't very clear on it, but it does look like it does. So what we can do is we can get ourselves a little bit of Tamiya extra thin. Okay, and just touch and float. There we go. Now, Revell plastics usually work quite nicely with Tamiya extra thin, I found over the past. Right, so there's seat one done. I'm going to get seat done, the second seat done, and then we'll look at bringing it together. Okay, so we're back. We've got both seats done. Very nicely indeed, I have to say. I'm quite impressed with them, and they should paint up nicely. Right, having a look at this. So the next step is to glue the seat direct onto the center walkway. which we can do, and then that glues to here. Now what I'm thinking to do is to glue this direct here straight away, and then that helps to align the seats. So with our Tamiya extra thin, we can just put a good dot right in the center there, just so that this glue goes right into the center of the part. That's evaporating because I'm too slow. Same again, dot in there, and then we'll just pop the seat center walkway here. Now there is a bit of play up and down, so I'm just going to set it down onto this locating bar on the bottom here, and making sure it's square to this panel line running along underneath the doorway. Happy with that. Tamiya extra thin really likes this. Plastic goes off pretty quick. What we'll do is we'll just run a little extra bit down just to make sure there's enough in there to bond it and it doesn't come apart. And knock the camera at the same time. There we go. Get you back into focus. Right. Now, one thing to remember when you've got super glue lying around is move it out of the way. Otherwise you end up getting it all over yourself, which I am terrible for doing. Right, so pair of tweezers just to get that bond in. And then these seats, they just locate on the walkway, and this piece here locates into that recess there. So click it in there and then into the locating holes there. And it looks like it's floating mid-air, but that is how it's supposed to be. So touch of glue, may as well just fit it in place, and we'll get a touch of glue on the two gluing points on the seat base. Just going to move this glue a bit closer. I have to get it around the camera. So in there and in there, and then we're going to give it a firm press down so it beds in properly to those two locating holes. And we'll pop in the second seat here. Notice I haven't glued the back yet because I want to make sure I have to do a test fit on the fuselage. So same again in there, so you can see that piece locating into the hole in the bulkhead, and then get those two locating pins into the locating points on the walkway. Not the strongest of joints by any stretch of the imagination from Revell. However, we've got it glued in. Bit of a press. There we go. And instantly that's starting to come alive. Right. Now, I'm assuming that we need to make sure these seats are square, but we'll try and fit this into the cockpit half and see what we get. So that should locate into there, and we've got a good fit in that. No, the seats aren't going to foul anything. Right. Moving on, we've got to put in, if I move this out of the way, move this up, we've got to put in, they can go out of the way because they're not needed now. There we go. So we've got bulkhead 81, which is here. That's bulkhead 81. And then we've got part 83, which is for the front gunner. A little bit of connection point to clean up there. Obviously not going around to cleaning this part up very well. If you want a really neat job, a great advocator of using good quality metal files. With the teeth on them, rather as an abrasive on a sanding stick. Sands, the teeth on these cut, so you do tend to get a cleaner finish, and then any burring you can just scrape off with the edge of a knife. Right, now this part I have cleaned up. This part here glues onto this part here. So if we offer it up, there we go. Now, it's going to get to a point where we need to think about painting. And are we happy, or should I say, am I happy that I am going to be able to get all the angles with the airbrush to paint this up and to do a little bit of, obviously, washing and a little bit of dry brushing to highlight the ribs. So that's a consideration I need to think about. Also, we need to make sure it's going to fit into the fuselage, and we need to get this piece stuck on here. So, a bit of thinking to do. I personally think I can do what I need to do by gluing this together. We've also got the control columns to think about, which I think will probably be going in after. They locate on these holes here, there and there on the seats. So I'm actually going to take a chance and glue this. So let's put a spot of time here extra thin, and then we'll just set this part down. I really do have butterfingers tonight. So make sure it's dead in center. Press. Make sure it's square with the bulkhead at the back. Now, what we can definitely do now is test fit in the fuselage shaft, so we get a far better idea on how it's fitting. So that one will fit snugly in there, and this piece will fit nicely in here, and it all actually seems to fit quite well. As parts go, I'm happy enough with that, so I think we're going to be okay. Now, what we also have, or what I also have as a part of this True Detail kit, is we've got cockpit sidewall detail, which will necessitate removing these little bits of ribs, which is really not a problem, but we need to make sure we can fit that in along with the actual main cockpit, and it fits quite nicely. And it will add a bit of detail to the aircraft, but what I need to do, probably should have done this before I actually glued the seats on. So we need to run a pencil line down here so we know how far from the bulkhead. Either that, we measure it. Should be able to do one or the other. So offer this up, get it in. I have to say that fit the front bulkhead is not as good as the fit at the back, but we'll worry about that when we get to it. What we can do is get a scribing pin. So just a sharp pin. Make sure you gently push the bulkhead to the back of the locating rib, and then just run it up there and you see we've been left with a mark there. So there's our line there for where we need to put the cockpit wall detail. I'll do the same on the other side, and then what I'll do is I'll quickly whip off these pieces here, and then I'll glue on that cockpit walls detail as well, because I think it'll just add a little bit extra. So you've got this piece here for the right side and this piece here for the left side, and we'll be able to paint and detail that up a bit better. Right, so I'm going to go away and do that. So you've seen how we've marked the distance, so we know where we need to put it. That rib and that rib need to come out just down to here and up to here, and then we'll fix this onto here, and we'll look at what other parts we need to get ready before we start getting on with the painting.